Yonks ago, for thrills, we'd send out our young fellas to do this. A couple of 100 years later, and not much has changed. And now a massive legal case involving 150 rugby players from around the world looks likely to go to court because of those knocks.
We believe various governing bodies and World Rugby were in breach of their duty with regards to subconcussive and concussive injuries that the players sustained while playing the game.
The group of players includes former All Black Carl Heyman, who's been diagnosed with early onset dementia.
Things tend to get a lot more difficult. Just everyday tasks become a problem, like shopping, sending an email, things like that actually become a huge task.
They say repeated concussions in their playing days have left them permanently injured.
Concussion is basically if you take a block of jelly, put it in a container of oil and put hard shell around it, then shake it, the jelly's still going to move because it's not stopping the actual brain from moving, which is what's occurring.
Over 11 years, just under 20,000 ACC claims were made for concussion and brain injuries from playing rugby. New Zealand Rugby does have rules in place for recovery, like a minimum stand down of 21 days after a concussion. That sounds legit, right?
I don't think it's enough time because there is no science behind the actual effects or the recovery from concussions. I mean, symptom recovery is one thing because we rely on people to tell us that they're okay. But it's a physiological recovery, and the research that I've done is looking at 28 to 30 plus days.
Being told you have a neurodegenerative disease at 41 is not something I was aware of. Although, it's so I think there's a real education aspect that needs to be addressed here.
We're still finding out more about the brain and concussions. But if we don't want our heroes on the field to destroy themselves for the benefit of our entertainment, maybe rugby needs to be less of this and more of this. Joining us now is rugby fan and sports writer Dylan Cleaver. Dylan, give me a sense of the human cost here. I mean, you've talked to players like Carl Heyman about this issue. What's it like seeing them go through these problems?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult, and I have, unstinting admiration for people like Carl who have lived their lives as these sort of supermen, these ultimate kind of macho warriors who are now showing an extraordinarily vulnerable side to them, to the public. Anyone that puts out a diagnosis like that to the public has got my admiration.
Rugby's rugby though, right? What can you change, people will be saying. What's the answer to that question?
Well, I think you're right. Rugby is rugby. It's inherently unsafe. I don't actually think you can take that out of the game. Particularly the modern game is very gladiatorial. It's very based around collisions rather than evasion. You can't make it safer, but you can have less of it and you can have less contact training.
OK, so what does that look like? Are we kind of losing the All Blacks? Do we get rid of Super Rugby?
No. What you do is you have a global season and you restrict the amount of games that a professional play in a season. Like I read somewhere that some pros in France are playing up to 40 games a season. I mean, that's crazy. Rather than it be a recommendation, you actually mandate that there's only 15 minutes of contact training per week. And I guess the one that nobody wants to hear in New Zealand, because you'll always get people saying, wrapping our kids in cotton wool, but you actually start the contact element of rugby later.
When I played rugby, I played for Hamilton under 13s, so it's another story, but we're always told to tackle around the legs. And is that unrealistic that we might go back to maybe a rule below the waist, tackles only?
Yeah, I can't see them being able to put that cork back into the bottle. I mean, the reason why rugby has become such a game of upper body strength is because those league elements came into it. If you tackle someone around the legs, even around the waist, they just offload the ball. You can't defend like that. So rugby has become a very, wrap up the ball and all. It's become a real game based around collisions.
Well, Dylan, you're not the only person calling for this. There's real momentum around it. Are rugby's days numbered?
No, not at all. It's too much fun. I mean, I love rugby. I just don't want to see ex-rugby players, dealing with neurodegenerative diseases.
Dylan, thanks for your insight into this part of our great sport, and thanks for joining us this evening.
No, not at all. Pleasure to be here.
Well, kia ora, New Zealand. Welcome along to the project. Mark Richardson is our fourth host tonight. Tough one, eh?
Yeah, I mean, like Dylan, I've got such respect for Carl for coming out and sharing what he's going through. And I think that, you know, there must be so many people that feel a strange sense of relief about today's research that says, yes, you're right, the knocks you took to the head has had a really long-term impact on you. My grandfather, he was a boxer when he was younger. He got Parkinson's disease at the same age as Carl. And so I know from experience that he and his family will have a really big journey to go on with this, so good on him.
Sorry to hear that. And the tough thing for people like Carl, he didn't know what he was signing up for in a lot of ways. If someone had said to him, well, you'll play professional rugby, but you might get a degenerative brain disease by 41, he would have had a chance to opt in or to opt out.
Well, now you can go in with eyes wide open, and I never thought I'd say this about someone in the media, but thank God for people like Dylan, because they still want the boomfer in the rugby because they understand that that's the human condition. That's what we want to watch. That's what they want to do. Look at the biggest growth sport in the world, MMA. I mean, it's prison violence, isn't it?
No,
and
it isn't.
We love it.
No, it isn't. It's professional sport and they're very talented athletes, but as you were.
But it's only a matter of time before we start giving that one and they go a bit further, isn't it? That's what we want as an audience, as human beings. You'll never take the human condition out of us. We like blood sport.
We just also like our athletes to be able to make informed decisions so that they can go on to live a long life. Yeah, she's with me.
And entertain me at the same time.